All right, so buckle up because today we're diving deep into a YouTube video that's, well, it's not your typical viral thing. It's more like a social experiment, but disguised as a prank.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Yeah, it really gets you thinking about how we see gender and how we act in public. The video is called I Pretended to Be a Girl in Public at Night, #5 prank, fed a feud at Samantha Stuck, from the channel Vlad NCL. And honestly, even Vlad, the guy who made it, was surprised by what happened.
So he sets out to prank people, but ends up learning something much bigger.
Exactly. He goes undercover as a woman at night, walking around with his girlfriend to see how people react. And let me tell you, some of these interactions are intense. What jumps out at you when you think about this kind of like lived experience way of understanding these issues?
Well, right off the bat, it's not a scientific study or anything, right?
Hmm.
But it does give you this raw, unfiltered look at what can happen.
It's like stepping into someone else's shoes, literally.
Exactly. And that can be so powerful for challenging what we think we know and making people more aware.
You said it perfectly. Early on in the video, Vlad's trying to keep things light, using a high voice, joking around.
But there's this underlying tension.
Right, because his deep voice keeps coming through, and almost immediately people start questioning if he's really a woman. Like they're already suspicious.
It's amazing how much we assume about gender just from looks and sounds,
Yeah.
and how quick we are to question someone if they don't fit those assumptions.
It makes you think about our own biases, for sure.
Totally.
As the night goes on, things get even more intense. Like there's a part where these guys challenge Vlad to do push-ups to prove he's a woman.
Wait, seriously? Push-ups?
Yeah, it's wild. But instead of just doing it, Vlad uses it as a way to call out the guys who are hitting on him.
Oh, I see. He turns it around on them.
Exactly. And he does it with humor, which is so smart. It exposes how ridiculous their behavior is, and you see the power dynamics at play.
It's like he's making a point, but in a way that gets people thinking, instead of just getting defensive.
He makes you laugh, and then you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is what women deal with all the time. As the video goes on, you can feel the tone shifting. It goes from lighthearted pranking to something way more serious.
That's interesting.
There's this one scene that really got to me. Vlad meets this guy who insists that he has to prove he's smart by doing complex math problems in his head.
A math test. What?
It was so weird and out of place and almost aggressive.
That's strange. It makes you wonder what was going on there. Was he trying to be dominant, or was it about fitting a stereotype? It adds a whole other layer to the experiment.
It's unsettling, for sure, but what really stood out to me was how many times men offered Vlad rides, or propositioned him and his girlfriend, or made unwanted advances. It wasn't just once, it happened over and over.
It really makes you think about the constant unwanted attention that so many women experience, just walking down the street.
And remember, Vlad is a big, muscular dude. Even with his physique, he's getting this kind of attention just because he's dressed as a woman. Imagine how vulnerable women who aren't as physically imposing must feel.
That's a good point. It shows how even the perception of being vulnerable can make someone a target, and how important it is to understand those power dynamics that fuel street harassment and the fear it causes.
And it gets scarier. There's a part where some guys start following them, making these gross comments like doggy doggy and calling them lesbians.
Oh, no.
Vlad and his girlfriend have to drive away fast to get out of there. My heart was pounding just watching it. It felt so real and unpredictable.
Yeah, you can see how quickly things can change from what seems like harmless flirting to something really threatening.
Yeah.
It highlights the unpredictable nature of harassment.
And it's in that moment that the humor totally disappears. You're left with the very real fear that so many women face in public.
And it really shows how important it is to be able to recognize that line, between just messing around and something that's truly scary for the person on the receiving end.
It's like a switch flips and suddenly it's not a joke anymore.
Right, exactly. And it makes you think about how these experiences, even if nothing physically happens, can really stick with someone.
Like the fear and anxiety can stay with them long after.
Yeah, for sure. It's not just about the danger in that moment, but the impact it has on someone's overall sense of safety and well-being.
That's such a crucial point. It's not just a one-time thing. And that brings us to the car chase scene in the video, which really drives home this idea of how vulnerable someone can feel when they're being pursued.
It's almost like this primal instinct kicks in.
I was holding my breath watching it. These guys who at first seemed like they were just flirting suddenly turn aggressive and chase after Vlad and his girlfriend in their car.
Wow. It's a real reminder that things can escalate so quickly.
And it shows that no matter who you are, that feeling of being chased or followed is terrifying. You get that adrenaline rush, the fear of the unknown. It's hard to shake off.
That's a visceral reaction.
And you can see it on Vlad's face as he's driving away. It's such a contrast to the playful attitude he had at the start of the video. By the end, he's clearly shaken and admits how unsettling the whole experience was.
It seems like a turning point for him, like the reality of the situation really hit him.
Yeah.
He goes from being maybe a bit skeptical to actually understanding what women go through on a daily basis.
His girlfriend's reaction is powerful, too. She says, "Being a girl is fucked. It's fucked. Trust me, it's terrifying." And Vlad's right there with her. It's clear this whole thing has opened his eyes to something he didn't fully get before.
It's like her words just sum up all those raw emotions. The fear, the frustration, the vulnerability is something so many women can relate to.
It's heartbreaking, but also so important that her voice is heard. And it makes me think back to earlier in the video when she tells Vlad a story about being harassed while she was waiting for him. He admits that at first he thought she was overreacting.
Oh, wow.
But after going through this experience himself, he completely understands.
It just shows how crucial empathy is and the importance of believing women when they share these experiences. It's about realizing that we might not always see the full picture from our own limited perspective.
So true. And that leads to Vlad's final message in the video. He talks directly to the viewers, especially the men, and tells them to believe women when they talk about being harassed or feeling afraid.
He's basically saying, don't brush it off, don't minimize it, listen and believe.
It's a powerful call to action and a plea for understanding and empathy. He's challenging men to be allies, to recognize that this is real and it's happening to women everywhere, and that it has a real impact on their lives.
It's about stepping up and saying, this isn't okay.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. It feels like we've just scratched the surface of something so complex, but it's definitely started some important conversations about gender, safety, and the power of empathy. What are your final thoughts for our listeners today?
I think the biggest takeaway here is that it's not just about raising awareness, it's about taking action. It's a call for men especially to take responsibility, to listen to women, and to actually work towards creating a safer and more equitable world.
It's not enough to just acknowledge the problem. We have to do something about it. And this video shows us that change is possible. Vlad started with one viewpoint, but by putting himself in someone else's shoes, his understanding completely shifted. He was willing to listen, learn, and change.
That's what it's all about. Being willing to challenge ourselves and be open to new ways of thinking. That's how we break down barriers and build empathy. It's understanding that we all have blind spots and we all have things to learn, and that progress takes time and effort from everyone.
And it's inspiring to see that happen, to see someone actually change their perspective. It makes you think about what could be possible if more people were willing to step outside their comfort zones and really listen to what others are going through.
It all comes back to being open to learning and growing, right? That's how we connect with each other and build empathy. We have to realize that we all have a part to play in making the world safer and fairer for everyone.
One thing that really struck me about this video was that it wasn't some made-up scenario. These were real people reacting to a real situation.
Yeah, and that makes it hit home even harder.
You see that this stuff happens every day to real people, and it's not okay.
It takes away that it's just a story feeling, and you have to confront the fact that street harassment is a huge problem. It's not just some random event. It's something so many women deal with all the time.
It's a tough reality, but it also shows how powerful these kinds of social experiments can be.
Right. They shine a light on these experiences.
They get people talking and thinking, and hopefully that leads to real change.
That's what we're aiming for. It can't just be about awareness. We have to turn that into action.
We have to challenge the way things are and work towards a society where everyone feels safe and respected. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is the most important message for our listener to take away from this?
I think it's a call to action for all of us, but especially for men. We need to understand that we have a responsibility to listen to women, believe what they tell us, and actively work towards creating a world where they don't have to live in fear.
It's not about protecting women. It's about empowering them to live their lives freely without that constant threat.
Exactly. And we have to challenge the harmful ideas that allow these things to continue. It starts with small things, speaking up when you see someone being harassed, educating yourself and others about consent, and supporting those who've been affected by these experiences.
What are your final thoughts for our listeners today?
We hope you'll take some time to reflect on what we've talked about today and think about how you can help make a difference. Remember, even small actions can have a big impact, and together we can create a better future for everyone.
This deep dive has been really eye-opening. It's challenged our assumptions, given us new perspectives, and hopefully left us with a sense of responsibility to create a world where everyone feels safe and respected.
It's been a powerful look at a complex issue. And the conversation doesn't end here. We encourage you to keep exploring these important topics, challenge yourself and others, and advocate for a better world.